start with this search for the VP. Yesterday, Donald Trump sits down with Indiana Governor Mike Pence, sits down with his wife Karen for more than an hour, and we have CNN's Jamie Gangel reporting that there has been this ongoing push by Trump's kids and other senior members of the campaign lobbying for this VP candidate who would appeal to the GOP establishment. What do you think Pence's chances are here?
Well, I think the vice presidential selection is going to come down to one person's comfort level, and that's going to be Donald Trump. But I do think when you look at Governor Pence, he's the type of person that can help unite the party. Obviously, as you mentioned, he has a number of years of Washington, D.C. experience. He was a part of the leadership there. He's gone back now and served as a chief executive of a very important state, a state that Donald Trump is going to need to win in order to be successful in this election. He's got great relationships with other Republican governors, and he's the type of person that would bring a lot to the ticket. So, you know, as you look at Governor Pence, it's really going to come down to the personal relationship that he and Mr. Trump could have to find out if they can work well together. And if so, if that's Mr. Trump's choice, I think Governor Pence would be a great choice for vice president.
We learned this week that he is also vetting New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, as well as former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. But listen to what Gingrich said yesterday.
Trump's job is, frankly, to quit screwing up, get the election down to 3 or 4 big issues, all of which come down to a single concept: enough.
Help Newt Gingrich, or does this hurt his chances by saying that Donald Trump has to quit screwing it up?
Well, I think, look, what you have with Newt Gingrich is someone who tells it like it is, and that's never changed. Again, you've got a person there who has extensive Washington, D.C. experience. He's been known to be able to be bipartisan and work across party lines. You saw what Joe Biden said about Speaker Gingrich yesterday. You know, somebody who can clearly get things done in Washington. He was the last Speaker of the House to balance the budget, something that's very important to Mr. Trump. And as you look at the debt crisis that we currently have, you want an executive who can have a priority of balancing the budget.
You say a lot of this has to do with the comfort level of Donald Trump, and clearly someone who is critical of him, that would certainly speak to that. Is that something that Donald Trump is receptive to, or is that something that he would say, hey, if you have an issue, call me up privately and don't be airing this in public? Does that rub Donald Trump in a way that would make him say, maybe this isn't the guy for me?
No, I don't think so. I think Mr. Trump is very open to getting all of the opinions available to him. And look, you know, what he wants and what he has said he wants is someone who can help him accomplish his legislative agenda. It's going to be very important as the chief executive of our country to make sure that he's cutting taxes, he's reducing our national debt, he's making sure our military is strong, and having someone who has those relationships in Washington is going to be a critical component of his administration. Newt Gingrich is one of those people. Chris Christie is one of those people. Governor Pence is one of those people. Jeff Sessions is another option. All of those people have extensive relationships in Washington, D.C. with members of Congress and the U.S. Senate and could serve Mr. Trump very, very well should he choose one of them.
He has said that he is planning to announce the running mate at the convention, but then this week he began to suggest this could come sooner, maybe as early as this week. Is that an indication that his campaign feels like it needs a push of momentum, that maybe there's been a halt and he needs a jolt?
No, I don't think so at all. Look, I think if you look at the poll that was released yesterday from Gravis, it's a 2-point race right now. It's 50 to 48. It's clearly within the margin. You know, the vice presidential selection is not something traditionally that voters are voting for. But what you have is finding the right person with the right temperament to be a good partner with Mr. Trump so that the legislative agenda can be accomplished. And look, you know, the election is very fluid right now. Donald Trump is going to do very well in these battleground states, and picking someone like a Mike Pence or Chris Christie that could help in those battleground states is going to be very important to him.